My name is Hai Nguyen. I'm co-founder of Affluence, the company behind Matrix. This webinar is around the introduction to Matrix and helping you understand the basics of the software and then provide you as much tips and tricks as possible. My goals for today, to help you understand the basics of Matrix, to help you become more effective and efficient at prioritizing tasks, projects, and emails, help you envision what your work and life success may look like with Matrix. But importantly, I want you to see the 20% of the features in PM that will give you 80% of the benefits. I think that's the best and most important way to get started today. And then also provide you some tips and tricks, especially around various use cases and scenarios. And again, this is where if you have a specific need, please bring it up and I'd be happy to address that need. And then hopefully you'll walk away feeling productive and have a strategy to be aligned with your team. I do want to emphasize the point that at the end of the day, Matrix is just a software, and it's just like any other pieces of software. Really, it's about your approach, your methodology. All we're trying to do is make it easier to achieve these goals. Why do you even prioritize? That's the number one question that I want you to ask yourself. And also, I want to remind everyone why you came here to this webinar in the first place. The vast majority of our customers are people who are already high achievers, right? So I imagine every single one of you already are at the top of your game. You're working hard. You're always striving to do better. But what's holding you back? I think that's a key question I have. And there's three reasons people come to Matrix. First, to be better at keeping track on the status of tasks across many areas of responsibilities. What happens is that we have more on our plate than the resources to tackle them. If that sounds familiar, then you're not the only one. As an example, I have so many things that I want to do, and so being able to allocate my time properly is so critical. The second is to create alignment across team members so that everyone knows what's important. I use the word communication as a way to emphasize how Matrix is a communication tool. So what that means is it helps takes the stuff that's in your brain and communicate to others, and then take the stuff that's in others' brains and communicate to you. So then when you're all sitting together, you're on the same page from the very beginning, and that's the key. The third element is to take back control of emails and meetings. I can safely say that every single one of us have just far too many emails, too many meetings. And not only that, we face challenges around prioritization of those emails, right? And then you're not able to address those most important emails because you just have new ones that's coming in at any point in time. And then with respect to meetings, what happens is you can spend the entire meeting talking about things that don't matter. If that's happened to you before, you're not the only one. And so the whole approach with Matrix is to surface up those critical priorities so then you can just talk about what's truly important. And then I want to emphasize again what happens when you don't prioritize. So imagine for a second, right after this call, you go back to the way you were used to. So you listen to this webinars and you find it completely useless. There's nothing, no takeaways. You find that Matrix doesn't work for you. You go back to whatever it is that you were doing before. So then what happens? And a couple of things that I've seen. One, you start losing sight on what's important and work on the wrong things. So if you have limited resources and you have more things than you can work on, and if you don't consciously make the choice of prioritization and someone else is making those choices for you, we end up working on the wrong task. And so what ends up happening is you feel busy, but you're not meeting your goals. And when I'm saying your goals here, it's your personal goals, right? All of us have things that we want to achieve. Maybe it's career advancement. Maybe it's just fulfillment in terms of the work that we work on. And then lastly, you feel completely overwhelmed. And I think that despite the best that I do, I feel overwhelmed sometimes. And there's nothing you can really do about it except to apply as much of the methodology as possible and then be able to recenter yourself as quickly as possible. Again, hopefully the webinar today will address some of these fundamentals. And I want to emphasize again that Matrix as a software is just one component. Half of the battle is in the philosophy behind Matrix, which I will also be talking about. So what is Party Matrix? Party Matrix is a comprehensive email priority and project management software that helps at 3 different levels. At the individual level, which is for every single one of us here, it helps you prioritize your tasks and emails. That's as simple as it is. Just be able to write down, instead of a task list, you write it in such a way where you can understand exactly what you need to work on. The second aspect of it is that if it helps you prioritize your task, then imagine helping your entire team prioritize the team task. And that's around creating alignment on priorities so that everyone within your team knows exactly what they need to work on. And that's a major milestone at the team level. But the next thing is around the organization. So if Party Matrix is able to help your team prioritize your task, imagine being able to take that information and propagate it upwards and outwards and be able to help everyone else create alignments. And then not only that, be able to track the history of all the changes that you have, and then be able to help your organization be better at everything from redelegating tasks, right? So what that means is if you have an employee that is no longer there, but you need someone else to take over those tasks, they have a complete understanding of what the priorities are prior to that other person leaving. So what makes Party Matrix better than any other existing solution out there right now is, first, we are the only software solution that's Microsoft 365 certified for web app, Teams app, and Outlook app. So what that means is that we go through the security process as mandated by Microsoft to ensure that we meet all industry standards. So this is just helpful for many of you using Party Matrix for the very first time. If you happen to use Microsoft, Teams, Outlook, and all that, we're probably the most integrated solution in there. What that means is that we actually leverage as many features as possible to bring Party Matrix to the context of what it is that you're using. Now, not everyone is on Microsoft, of course. You might be on Gmail or some other software suite. Party Matrix works completely independent of the Microsoft ecosystem as well. Thirdly, Party Matrix focuses on prioritization. I mean, hence the name of the software. I want to say over and over again that where we are different from everything else is the focus on prioritization, front and center, every step of the way. And by the way, that's hard. That's hard on you. And the one thing that I always tell customers is that you're going to find that it's challenging to use Party Matrix to prioritize your tasks because you have to make that conscious effort. But that's the point. If we don't prioritize from the very beginning, then we're just wasting our time working on things that may not matter, right? And so being able to decide what to work on as the first stroke in all of this is critical. Fourthly, we provide what I call people-centric collaboration. And I think one thing that most people don't realize is that every single piece of software is just a fancy user interface on top of your whatever data that you have. And so one of the things that we're able to do too is take all those tasks that you have across all your projects and help you understand, what do I need to do for this person? Right? That person could be your manager, that person could be your client, that person could be somebody that you work with closely, and aggregate all that information into one central place. And then finally, Party Matrix is available as a SaaS solution, which is what I'll be talking about today, but also HIPAA compliance if you're in healthcare and life sciences, and Azure Government Cloud for those who are in state and local governments. And then, of course, we have enterprise solution as well. So if you're interested or your organization's interested in any of these other options, please feel free to reach out to me. So what makes Party Matrix effective as a software is that it helps you understand what needs to be done now, what needs to be done later, and what you need to delegate. So hopefully, if you use Party Matrix correctly, that despite priorities shifting constantly, Party Matrix offered the one place everyone can go to understand what needs to be done. And I emphasize the constantly shifting priorities because it should be constantly shifting, right? Today might be different from tomorrow. There could be fires that you have to fight. The dynamic of the market could be changing, or you have a new initiative, or your organization is cutting costs or trying to grow in a different direction. So we accept the idea that priorities change. And so when you use Party Matrix, the whole point is that you have this one central place where you go to. And then if you ever have a question, hey, what should I be working on? Or, hey, who is working on what? And for this particular initiative, you have the answer. So that's what I want to emphasize here around the effectiveness of Protometrics. I want to draw the corollary to that too, which is if think about what it is you're doing at this moment. You know, what software are you using today? What system or processes do you have today? Do you have the answer to these questions? And if the answer is no, that's sort of the point of Protometrics. So hopefully you're able to use this software and move the needle forward. So let's talk about the fundamentals behind Protometrics. So there's a famous quote attributed to former President Eisenhower: what is important is seldom urgent, and what is urgent is seldom important. Now, what I really, really love about this quote is that it takes the things that we do and adds a whole new dimension to it. Let me ask you a simple question. What are the 15 things you have to do today, right? Start writing them down. Now you end up having to have this list. So my next question is, if you have to decide what to work on, where do you start? Do you start at the top of the list or the bottom of the list or somewhere random in the middle? And then the second question is, what happens if you have to add something to the list? Do you add it to the top of the list or the bottom of the list, right? And so what happens for all of us is that we are fighting this urgent problem, which is task lists are coming, new tasks are coming in constantly, and it goes to the top of our list every single time. That last email that came in is the one that you're going to end up responding to first. Is it the most important email? Probably not, but it's the last email. And so therefore, it took your attention away from everything else. And so therefore, we have to take the things that we do and split it into the dimensions of importance and urgency. And we ask ourselves the question, is this task the most urgent task, but is it also the most important task? Is this task important, but is it not urgent? Is it something that I start planning for and thinking about? Is this task urgent, but actually not important? So maybe I put it on the back burner or delegate it. And then finally, is this task not important nor urgent? I should get rid of it completely. And that's the question I want you to ask every single day as you use Protometrics, as you think about the things that you have to do. And that's how Protometrics works. So what happens is you use something called the Eisenhower Matrix, a simple, powerful time management framework that breaks all these tasks that you have into the dimensions of importance and urgency, hence 4 different quadrants, and then help you prioritize and make the most out of your time by helping you understand where you should focus. And it's as simple as that. So Protometrics is really just an implementation of the Eisenhower matrix. So then you have the tasks that are in the do now quadrant, the plan for quadrant, the delegate, and your inbox. You should not have anything that's not important or not urgent, but instead the inbox quadrant 4 is where you start to capture everything that you have to do, and then from there, put it into the appropriate quadrants. Now, when you look at this, there's a couple of things I want to point out. The first is that the do now, they're equivalent to the fires you have to fight, right? They're equivalent to the things where if you don't do it, everything else will start breaking. One fascinating thing is that where ideally, if we are doing things right, you have very few things in quadrant 1, right? Instead, you have the most important things in quadrant 2, and you're constantly planning for it. You're working on it. Now, if, to the people in the audience and the people watching this video, if you're a project manager, you should be in the planning phase vast majority of the time. If you're constantly firefighting, you will not make progress because you're not thinking about the future. You're just firefighting what it is that's happening today. So ideally, when you start Protometrics for the very first time, maybe you have 25% of the task in quadrant 1, but as you use Protometrics more, that number will start being reduced. So then you're firefighting only 10% of the time, and then you're spending 40% of the time in quadrant 2, and then everything else goes into the quadrant 4. So just keep that as a rule of thumb, and as you use Protometrics, to make sure that you're not having everything in quadrant 1. If everything is important and urgent, then nothing is, right? So that's just something to keep in mind. So what happens next is that the 4-quadrant Eisenhower matrix create alignment because it forces you to prioritize from the beginning. You are not doing a task list. That's what I want you to keep in mind. And yes, some of you will use the task list and say, you know what, I can't go and prioritize all this. And you know what, there's many software to do that. You could use a text document. You could use just a simple task list. You could use your calendar. You could use a piece of paper. That's okay. Pretty Matrix may not be right for you. But if you find the 4 quadrants really, really helpful in helping you understand where to spend your time, that's exactly what our software is designed for. Now, here's the magic. What happens is that when you do that exercise I mentioned, which is take that task list that you have and split into those buckets, right? Now you have your list of priorities. Ask your coworkers to do the exact same thing and talk to each other and compare notes. Get together into the conference room, project your priorities onto the big screen, and start walking through. Now, if everything is always aligned, if everyone looks at your priorities and you look at your manager's priorities, you look at your coworkers' priorities, you look at your direct reports' priorities, and everything matches perfectly, that's fantastic. Party Matrix, may not be that helpful because you've got perfect alignment. You're also a unicorn because I haven't seen too many organizations that's been able to achieve that. But imagine if you start seeing some discrepancies. For example, you see something from your manager that says, hey, task XYZ is very important and urgent, but it's not even on your radar, or vice versa. So discovering the disagreement is exactly where we add the most value. And so if you're using Party Matrix and on a weekly basis, you find that discrepancy, that means you're using it right. So I want you to keep that in mind as well. A couple of tips real quick, and then I'm going to show you the product itself. One, if you're a manager, create a project for your team staff meetings. And then during your staff meeting, screen share it. So then everyone can see and look at the priority list and say, okay, you know what? This is aligned. I see exactly what everyone's working on. If you're managing multiple sites, so let's just say if you're an operations manager and you have multiple manufacturing lines, et cetera, then create a project for each site and location. So then you have a priority list for every single site. If you don't do that, then it'll be very hard for you to keep track of all of these things. And then also within each of those sites, you have the appropriate people in there. So then everyone can go and see, okay, you know what, this is what I need to work on and so forth. So if you're overseeing things, then what you want to be able to do is see the priority across each of these sites, while everyone else just see what they need to see. If you're following some specific training programs or initiative, then create a project from Party Matrix and turn that into a template so then you can follow those specific guidelines. Party Matrix has a lot of powerful capabilities, including the ability to actually recreate recurring templates. So what that means is that if you have a priority list and that priority list reoccur on a weekly or monthly or quarterly or annual basis, everything from if you're in accounting, maybe you have to do your quarterly reviews, or if you have a employee onboarding process and you have a list of things they have to do, you can actually turn Party Matrix into those templates as well. If you're a business owner, then you can create projects for each of your departments. So then you know what accounting is working on, what finance is working on, what customer success or customer service is working on. And then lastly, if you're an individual contributor, then create a project for your own goals, for your own tasks, but also use our capabilities around artificial intelligence to create goals for you to get your promotions or whatever it is that you also have. So the idea is that you have maybe so many different initiatives and so many projects and so many people delegating things to you, you want to make sure you put it all together into one central place so you have that. So these are just different examples of how you might use Party Matrix. The neat thing is that you may use Party Matrix in many different ways, right? Ways I haven't listed here, but the software itself is flexible enough for that. And so when you look at Party Matrix at the organizational level or at the team level, everyone may be coming together in a different approach, but Party Matrix will make it work regardless. I do want to mention that the webinars are recorded, and so I'll be posting, for example, this webinar on our website afterwards, but I also have addressed various other topics around email management or on templates, or on teamwork or setting goals. So obviously in a webinar like this, we can't address everything, but I want to let you know that other resources are available. So if you want to go and review some of the other things that we have, be sure to check out our website there. With that, I'm going to go ahead and jump into the demo of the product and show you how to put this into practice. As I mentioned, there's an opportunity for you to ask questions in the chat. So if you have any questions around the presentation so far or during the product demo itself, please send them there and I would be happy to address them right after the demo. Okay, now I'm going to open up my Protomatrix. So I'm going to go ahead and jump to the web application here. And so this is the web application, and I'm going to go ahead and choose a project called My Personal Priorities. As you can see, when I choose a project called My Personal Priorities, on the left-hand side, it's my list of projects, right? So that is one of my projects. And then within the center here, front and center, is the 4 quadrants. So you can see I have 4 quadrants: do now, do later, delegate, and inbox. So whenever I create a task, I have to decide within these 4 quadrants here where it belongs. So let me give you an example. Let's just say if I want to follow up with webinar participants, right? Obviously, this is something that I will have to do. There's no question around that. Now, that's a task that I have to do. And then what I'm going to say is I'm going to say due tomorrow at 2 p.m. Now, Protomatrix uses what's called natural language to take the information that I type here and set the due date for me automatically. And so as you can see, the task is created. On the right-hand side is what's called the item details. The item details is where I can add additional information around the task. So for example, I can see that this belongs in a certain project. I can move it to another project if needed. I have the task name. If I need to modify the task name, I can. And then down below that, I have the ability to delegate this task. So let's just say if it's something for me, it's a personal priority, then of course I don't need to delegate. But if I need someone else to do it, I can actually click on that icon and choose another person. As you can see, the due date is set for me for tomorrow, and then also the time is set for me because of my text here that I typed. And not only that, it uses my local language. So many of you are not on my time zone, and so therefore, you'll use your own time zone. The system automatically detects and processes that, sets a due date for you. And then down below that, I have the ability to actually chat. And so let's just say if this task is actually very important, I have the due date set already, but one of the things I like to do is I like to set reminders. So I'm going to say, remind me daily. So just in case I don't get this task done by my due date, I'll get a daily reminder from Protomatrix to ensure that I get this done. Now, I want to emphasize something real quick. The difference between due date and reminders. Let me give you an example. Let's just say if your task is to generate a report for the end of the quarter, right? That task is going to take you 4 or 5 days to do. So you set the due date on June 30th or July 1st or whatever. Now, come July 1st, if you hadn't gotten started, how are you going to get it done on that day? So reminder is a way for you to actually bring this up before that. So you can say due in 2 weeks and then remind me in 1 week. So now you'll get a reminder far, far before the actual due dates. And for me personally, I like to use a recurring reminder. And here's the reason why. What happens earlier when I mentioned to you about things that are urgent but not important? Guess what? On a daily basis, you probably receive so many emails, right? That comes in. And so every hour there's more emails. Every hour there's more emails. And then every hour there's a message from your team member. So it could be via Teams, it could be via text message, it could be who knows through whatever program that you use, or someone, just knocking on the door of your office, barging in, interrupting you and so forth. And so we get so many interruption that as we approach our due date, we sometimes just miss it completely. It completely overshoots, and now suddenly it's not on our calendar anymore. It's not on our radar anymore because 1,000 other urgent things have come in. Same thing applies to emails, right? You get an email that's very important and you have to answer that email, but you didn't get around to it. And so what do? Sometimes, you mark it as unread or you flag it or whatever, but then you get more emails that come in, and now those new emails is top of mind, and your most important email is way, way down the list. So by setting these recurring reminders, what happens is it's a way to trick your brain. And so it will actually come back and be top of your list, from the perspective of Protomatrix. So then you remember to get to it, right? And so I consider the due dates and the reminders to be 2 of the most important features inside Protomatrix. So when you create tasks in Protomatrix and you're putting them in the appropriate quadrants, and your most important task you write down your most important tasks, be sure to set those due dates and to be sure to set those reminders. If you think about importance and urgency, the quadrants here is very useful to set that importance, but the time aspect is critical. So go ahead and set a due date, right? So go ahead and set a reminder. And if it's wrong, that's okay. You change the due date and Protomatrix will track that entire history of all those changes for you, how long it takes you to get it done and all that. And I think it's a very, very powerful way to ensure that we work on the right things. Now, next to the chat, you have the notes. This is where you can add subtasks. You can add notes around the task itself. And one of the things that we're doing for you is actually this thing called Fill with AI. What it does, it actually comes up with those subtasks for you. If you think about it, if you're a project manager, one of your jobs is to go and ensure that if you have an action that you need to take, that you come up with the sub action to fulfill that task, right? That's what subtasks are. So what we do is if your task has the appropriate name right here and you click Fill with AI, our system will try to brainstorm and come up with those subtasks for you. So this is something that you guys can start playing with after, right after this call. Go ahead and create some task in Protomatrix. It could be, generate reports or increase sales lead or whatever, and then use our Fill with AI to come up with those tasks, those subtasks. The idea of the notes here, though, is not to be comprehensive and, rich text and all that. You can attach documents and so forth into Protomatrix for those purposes. Lastly, you have resources, which is where you can have documents, files, links, emails. And it's all around context. The idea around context is that being able to put everything that's relevant to the task into one central place. Obviously, when I follow up with webinar participants, I need the attendance list. And so that's a document that I can upload into here. I can also upload the actual email that I sent. And so that is a way for me to track all that. So then if someone else needs to go and take a look at my work, or do the task that needs to be done, they have that information present. And so you can think of resources as a way to actually tie everything together. So then, you have one central place for somebody else. So think about from that perspective. I actually want to make an aside real quick here too around Protomatrix and around the concept of resources and priorities. What happens is you saw that I created a task and I assigned to somebody. But imagine if in 6 months, I need someone else to take over this particular task or this particular job, right? I'm going to bring in a new person and I need that person to know exactly everything about this task. If you don't have a system like Protomatrix in place and you just sent emails back and forth, or you're just talking to each other and you're asking them to do something in, while you're walking around in the office or whatever, when someone else new comes in, they have to relearn all of that all over again. And then not only that, all the notes and all the context is gone, right? And so instead, with Protomatrix, you can assign it to a completely new person. They can go through Protomatrix, understand the priority level within the matrix project, and then see the chat with the history of every changes that's ever been made for this item. Go to the notes and be able to go and see the details there. They can go to the audit trail and see all the actual changes to the notes itself, and then have all the links to all the documents, SharePoints, PowerPoints, sales invoice, emails, etc., within one central place. That's the one thing that I don't think most people realize around the power of Protomatrix. They look at it as a way to track tasks, but they don't realize that it's not just about tasks. It's about creating an audit trail, creating a history, creating one central place so everyone can be aligned. So if you're a business owner or you're an executive and you want to make sure that your team members have continuity and all that, think about that, how Protomatrix fits into that picture. Okay, so now in the item details, there's many other things that obviously I'm not sharing, and I'll let you explore that. But one last thing I'm going to show you up here is actually the ability to star a task and the ability to add an icon. So what happens is that when you star something, it pops at the top of the list. As you can see, I have one task. Starring it doesn't make that much of a difference, but starring it if I have 5 or 10 things in here, starting it puts it at the top of the list, makes it easier to find. And then not only that, when I search across my entire Pretty Matrix, I can actually filter it by star. And then for the icon, one of the things I like to do is actually, I've seen success with these 3 colors, red, yellow, and green, just as a way to signify whether or not something is on schedule or behind schedule, etc. And so it's a layer of visual that is helpful as you have more and more tasks inside Pretty Matrix. Okay, so that's the basic of an action, a task, or an action item, or whatever you want to call it. Now, as you can see on my left-hand side, I have my list of projects, my personal priorities. One of the things I want to recommend to you today, too, is go ahead and create a project called My Team Priorities as well. So now that you've created personal priorities, your team priorities is where you can actually share this entire list with your coworkers. So when I select this project, on the right-hand side is my project details. So instead of item details is my project details, which is where I can go and change the name of the project. I can actually star the project, and I can also decide who's going to be in this project. So for example, if you're a manager, you might have your staff member be within this project. If you are managing multiple locations with different sites, then within each of the project that represents each site, invite the appropriate project manager, invite the appropriate operations manager, or operations director for every single one of those facilities, right? So now everyone, when they go in, they can see the shared priorities, but they see only what they need to see, because you don't want to overload people with things that they're not needed. Down below that, you actually have the quadrant names and the quadrant colors. The thing about Pretty Matrix is that it's completely customizable. So we talk a lot about the philosophy around the Eisenhower matrix, but in reality, you can adapt Pretty Matrix to almost anything else as well. So what that here, instead of having do now, maybe I'll add the word fires just as a way to indicate that, hey, we're also using quadrant 1 to troubleshoot things. And then instead of having delegate, maybe I change it to files and resources, right? And so this is where documents that you need to review and so forth. And then if I click on this quadrant color, I can change the color of the quadrants. Again, it's a visual. It doesn't actually impact the matrix itself, but it's a visual. So, you know, some people like a certain color to represent high priority and so forth. A couple of things I'm going to show you. Go ahead. I'm going to jump to a different project here. So this is, for example, a weekly staff meeting project. One of the things in this particular project is that I have my various action items that I have. In Pretty Matrix, you can also look at the information using a different view. So I have the quadrant view, but also I can go to the list view. The list view is where I can see all the tasks. To me, the list view is very useful if you have a lot of tasks that are overdue. So it's very easy to see the due dates, and then you can sort by due date and so forth. You can think of it like, you know, a fancy Excel sheet or something like that. That's not in the quadrant format. And then if you have tasks that have due dates, then they'll show up here in the calendar. And then if you are a project manager and you actually have, let me see if I can find another project here. If you're a project manager and you actually have a lot of tasks that have due dates that span across multiple months, and you have dependencies and so forth, then we actually have a Gantt chart that automatically gets built using your Pretty Matrix data. You don't have to do anything. You just have to open the Gantt chart view, take a screenshot, put it in your presentation, and you're done. So Pretty Matrix lets you take those same data and displays in different format. And then earlier, I talked about the one-on-one, the people aspect of Pretty Matrix. Well, there's something called the one-on-one view here. When you click on the one-on-one view inside Pretty Matrix, you can actually select a person, and that could be your direct report, that could be your manager, that could be your client if you collaborate together in Pretty Matrix. What happens is Pretty Matrix will show you every single task you have in common with that person across your entire Pretty Matrix. And then not only that, if you use Microsoft, it actually will pull up upcoming meetings as well as documents you share with each other, or planner tasks, etc., all in one central place. The reason we did this is because, you know, if you think about it, you know, when you work on something, you're typically doing it for somebody, right? There's always various stakeholders that's really important. So that's why we bring it all together into one central view. So if you're a project manager and you're having a meeting with a colleague, you don't want to go and open every single project just to talk about the task. You open one place, select the person, have a full conversation. And then if you're managing somebody and you have a one-on-one and you need to delegate them tasks, you can do so directly from this view by clicking Add Share Task. And you can type in that task name. So for example, generate reports due in 2 weeks or something like that, and then assign it to appropriate project. The task will be delegated to the person and invite you as a follower directly from this view. The reason I also want to emphasize how useful this is because we have so many meetings where we talk about the things we want to do, and then no one writes it down, right? You've probably seen this before. You have a staff meeting, you brainstorm all these awesome things. 2 weeks later, you get back together, and then someone will ask, "Hey, by the way, did we do that?" It's like, "Oh, I didn't write it down," or "No, we didn't capture it." So when you have your meeting, you can actually just go open up this view, create a task, and it assigns it to the person as needed. The other thing I want to emphasize too is how useful it is to project whatever that you see right here in Promatrix onto the screen when you're in that conference call or inside the meeting room, or display it on the screen when you're having a Teams call instead. So what happens is that you have one central place to hone in and have a conversation around only the things that are important and urgent, or the things that are due soon or overdue, etc. So a lot of times you'll get in a meeting and you're talking about all sorts of stuff and you realize you never get to the most important task. So I really want to emphasize that as a best practice that's very useful. So if you start doing that after today's call, then to me, I feel like I've done my job. Okay. So now we've talked about the project, we talk about tasks, we talk about being able to customize the project, we talk about being able to customize the task. Now, I didn't talk about how to, create templates and so forth. If you're interested in that, what happens is that once you build a particular project, so for example, again, a weekly staff meeting, you can go to the top right here, save project as template, etc. So you can see how we have a lot of other options that I'm not going through the details. I want to switch gear a little bit and talk about email management, because I think that's a challenge for all of us. So Promatrix has probably one of the best integrations inside Outlook. So let me show you how that works. Let's just say if I get an email, again, a very important email, perhaps a customer quote request, or an email from my executive that says, "Hey, can you do XYZ?" But if you can't get it done right now, what do? Right? The vast majority of us will flag it and then mark it as unread and then hope that we get back to it. It works fine if it's a day or two, and it works fine if you don't have 10 other emails that will come in the next hour. But instead, what you can do with Promatrix is click on this option here, apps, and then you have this thing called Promatrix turn email into task. And if you don't see this already, click on add apps and just search for that. But this is our Outlook integration. What this allows me to do is open up Promatrix menu here and the ability to prioritize an email. So this email came in, it's very important, but I can't get to it right now. What happens is I'm going to go and put it into a specific project. I can choose what quadrant it goes in. I can assign it to another person. Then I can set a due date, and maybe it's 3 weeks from now, and then click capture email. And when I do, guess what? On the right-hand side, it shows you that item details, just like you saw in the web application, right? So what that means is I have a task here. I can start it. You see how it's already assigned to a person. The due date's already set. And then I can say, remind everyone daily. So now on a daily basis, you're going to get a reminder around tackling this very important email, and you'll never forget it. It is so powerful, so useful, and you'll never forget your most important emails ever again by using this capability. The other thing you can do too, though, is that, I just want to mention real quick, your coworker, by the way, when they go to the resources section, that email's uploaded right here. Okay, so now they're able to open that email and respond to it, or they can actually respond to this and ask questions or follow up or whatever as needed. The other thing you can do is actually you can attach an email to an existing task as well. So if you go to here, instead of prioritizing the email, you can open Promatrix, and now you can take this email, search for the task that's relevant, and actually attach the email to an existing task. So now you might have multiple emails, you might have already existing documents and so forth, all in one central place. As far as I know, this is the only software application that does that, being able to tie it all together into one place. So then you have all the context you need. And by the way, you don't have to use Outlook nor our extension to convert email into tasks. Protomatrix has what's called the inbox email address. So I'll show you how to get that. If you go back to Protomatrix here, click on inbox, and there's something called your secret inbox. If you click on this, you're going to get a special email address. Take this email address and save it as a contact. So I save it as a contact called Inbox Protomatrix. So when you use any email software, whether it's not Outlook or Gmail or Apple Mail, what happens, instead of actually clicking on a button and actually prioritizing the email, you can forward the email into Protomatrix, or you can write an email to Protomatrix to create a task. So I'll show you how that works. So let's just say if I go to new mail here, I do inbox, okay? And then I can say a very important task. Okay, imagine now that will create the task, and in the body of the email itself, I can say due tomorrow, and I can say remind me weekly, and so forth. So what I've done is I can take any email, forward it into our system, set due date, set reminders using the command system in Protomatrix. So helpful. For me personally, I use this all the time because, you know, I'm out and about on my phone, I get an email, and I'm on Apple Mail, so I can't use the Outlook extension. I literally forward it into my Protomatrix, set the due date, and now, you know, I'll get a recurring reminder to make sure that I get those emails addressed, or, you know, whatever it is that I have to do. So I talked a lot about, you know, the notifications and so forth. Let me show you how that works. When you go to Protomatrix, there's this thing called the home view. If you click on the home view, you get what's called alerts. Alerts essentially are items that requires your attention. It could be things like someone delegated you a task. It could be something like you delegate a task to somebody and now they've updated it. Maybe they marked it as done, or they asked you a question or whatever, right? That'll come up here. Or you have something that the due date triggered, or the recurring reminders triggered. So ideally, at the end of your day, you go to the alert section here and it's empty. That means you've addressed everything already. But sometimes it actually builds up. So for me, I actually have a lot of alerts that come in just because I'm so on so many different tasks. So what happens is I can go up here and I can clear all notifications or clear older notifications. And by the way, this is why those recurring reminders are so powerful, because I'll get a reminder today, and then I didn't get to it because I have 60 other alerts, right? But that's okay, because tomorrow I'll get that alert again. So as long as I'm checking my Protomatrix, I will get the notifications for the things that are relevant. And then when you create a task in Protomatrix and you make a comment in Protomatrix, you can actually also use the the person. So for example, if you write the here, you see how just using the symbol it pulls up team members. So I can actually mention a coworker and they'll get a notification as well. So it's super useful to make sure that the most relevant people are involved in all these tasks. So when we talk about prioritization, you know, I talked about your personal priorities. As you can see, that's what your personal priority project is for. But at the team level, Protomatrix is able to tie all of these together, and it's just beyond just task management, beyond project management, but it's just ensuring that everyone's on the same page and everyone knows what they need to work on. And then when it comes to views, there's other views that you can use as well. So the matrix is the matrix view is the matrix prioritization quadrants, right? But then if you go to the agenda view here, then it's around tasks that's more due date centric. And then of course on the left hand side, you can see how, you know, you have the calendar view, you have the Gantt chart view, and with Protomatrix, you're able to pull everything together. You can sort things, you can filter things, and just get the information that you need. I'm going to show you one last feature here in Protomatrix, which is called the search view. When you go to the search view, this is what we call the master list. It is the list that encompasses everything that you have inside Protomatrix, be able to give you the information that you need. So let me give you an example. Let's just say if you are working on your performance review and you need to find all the things that you've worked on, right? Simply click on filter and you can say, what are all the things that I finish in quadrant 1, only assigned to me, and then you can choose the dates and in what type of project. Right after you do that, Protomatrix will filter all that information for you, and now you have one central place. You click on print here, and you can actually save that list that you can provide to your manager or upload it into your performance review portal. Similarly, if you're the manager and you want to know what your coworkers have been working on, or you want to see what are the things that's overdue, you can go back to the filters here too and build all those filters. After you create the filters, you can actually save that as a filter. So then the next time you don't have to recreate that again. Super powerful way to see and have a full visibility on everything that's important. Now, I mean, this is so powerful and flexible. I can't go through all the options. It's just something for you to explore. I want to mention that, Protomatrix works well, whether or not you have 100 items or 10,000 items, whether you have 2 projects or 200 projects. In my work account, I have more than 300 projects and more than 10,000 items that I'm actively following. And so for me, it's all about honing in and focusing on the most important projects. So as you can see, I have a list of star projects. And so in my work account, I have 5 to 10 star projects. And those are the projects that I care about. So when I look for information, I look at those star projects. Everything else is secondary, right? And so my advice to you, don't worry about creating more projects. Don't worry about having a lot of different tasks and so forth. Just make sure that you prioritize them. Make sure you set the proper metadata and that your most important tasks have due dates and reminders. The last thing I'm going to show you now is our Microsoft Teams integrations. It's really neat if you use Teams because you can actually install Protomatrix on the left-hand side here. Then you can pin it. And now when you open that inside Teams, we have the entire Protomatrix. Inside Teams, you don't even have to open our software on the web app. Similarly, inside Outlook, you can have Protomatrix open here. Your entire Protomatrix is available inside Outlook. You don't have to switch contacts. And the whole idea is that Protomatrix is there no matter where you are and how you're working. But additionally, in Teams, there's a couple of other options that you have, which is the ability to add the one-on-one directly within the chat with your coworker. So every single person that you talk to, you can actually have this one-on-one view, right? And so now you don't have to go and open Protomatrix, click on one-on-one, select the person. Instead, you just go to the one-on-one tab inside the conversation with the person, and you click on this plus icon to add Protomatrix as a tab. The other thing is that I use is actually sharing Protomatrix action items with my coworker. So sometimes I'll delegate someone a task, but maybe they don't see it in Protomatrix or they're so busy that I actually need to send them an additional message. I can actually go down here, click on Protomatrix, and actually attach what's called action cards. So I cannot emphasize enough how deeply integrated Protomatrix is into every single thing inside the Microsoft ecosystem. So we integrate into workflows. We integrate into Power Automate. We integrate into Planner and all that. So if you're looking at using Protomatrix and you're looking at using Office 365, it's almost a no-brainer. We actually enhance Office 365 tremendously with our integrations. The other thing too is if your organization is about to adopt Microsoft Copilot, which is their new AI system, we're one of the very, very first application that works with Copilot. And so what that means is you're able to have a conversation with the AI and ask questions like, what Protomatrix task do I have to do this week? Things like that. And Microsoft and Protomatrix will work together to find you the information that you need. Okay. Now there's so many other things I can show, but I won't because I don't think you need all of those. Again, let's talk about what are the things that you should apply to actually use Protomatrix today. So I'm going to jump back to my presentation here. And so if you do nothing else, one, make sure you sign up for Protomatrix, of course. And then if you use Teams and Outlook, then add our extensions there. Otherwise, you can also install our integrations for, our applications for Mac and Windows and iPhone and all that. Create a project highlighting your top priorities. That's your personal priority project. I highly, highly recommend that. Ask each of your coworkers to also do the same exercise and create their project with their priorities. Sit down and compare notes, right? If you do that one time, maybe let's just say you never use Protomatrix ever again. Just do that this week, create a project to make sure everyone's on the same page. And that's all you got to do. And see if you find anything that's surprising or interesting. And I have a feeling that you will. And then if you're ambitious, create a project to track all of your personal priorities. Use our AI system to actually generate goals for you. So when you create a new project, you can actually use our AI to build not only the subtasks, but every single task within your project as well. And then when you invite team members to a team priority project, project that onto the screen. And so that's very, very useful. So when you have a team meeting, just project your team priorities onto the screen and you guys will be on the same page. So I highly recommend every single manager do that as part of their routine. Some advice, make sure you use Promatrix to track your high impact tasks. Anything that requires a decision to be made, right? We need to choose between A and B. We need to decide when to work on X, Y, Z, etc. Those are the examples of tasks that you should definitely have in Promatrix so that everyone will know the status of those. Think of Promatrix as a communication tool between your manager and team members. And so when I say that, it's about taking all those priorities that you have in your brain, put it down into something tangible, that is Promatrix, and then asking everyone to do the same thing and then compare notes. And then thirdly, use Promatrix to manage your individual goals. The reason I emphasize individual is because that's what Promatrix started out as. More than a decade ago, Promatrix started out as a software to prioritize personal tasks. And then over time, we became this full-fledged solution to manage team priorities and organizational priorities. But the individual is most important. You are the most important aspect in all of this. If it works for you, everything else will fall into place. What success should look like with Promatrix. On a personal level, you should be checking Promatrix at least every week to remind yourself of your goals. You using Promatrix as one central place to track all your priorities. And then at the team level, everyone on the team understands and are aligned on key tasks. There should never, ever be a question that someone would say, I didn't know we were supposed to work on that. You shouldn't have that. Promatrix should give you the answer. And so your response should be, you should be looking at your Promatrix to make sure that you're working on the right things. And then lastly, if you have important emails, make sure you prioritize them. You saw how I can delegate that email to team members. I can organize it into the various projects. So if you're working with external clients, there should never be an excuse that you miss an email or that an email that's very important was not assigned to the right person, right? Because you can actually do all of those things and tie all those emails, all those documents, all those files together into one central task for the appropriate person. And if it's something that's really important, then you have those due dates, you have those recurring reminders anyways. With that, I conclude my presentation. So if there's any questions right now, I'll take a look and I'll try my best to answer them. And I also want to mention again that the webinars are posted on our website. And then also feel free to reach out to us, helpdesk@affluence.com with any specific questions that you have. I have seen every single use case imaginable, so I'd be happy to answer your questions as well. All right, so I'm going to answer these questions here. Is it an app that comes with Teams as a free app, or is it a paid app? So Promatrix is a paid application if you want the full-fledged capabilities. We also have a free tier. So if you're new to Promatrix, you can actually use Promatrix as a free tier, which means up to 5 projects, up to 100 tasks, up to 5 collaborators, up to 250 total items. If you're in the free tier, you don't actually have to pay for it. But then as you use Promatrix more and you want to be able to track more and more things, that's when your organization can use Promatrix. Under the free tier, Promatrix is available across all of our platforms. So inside Teams, inside Outlook, on a desktop app, mobile apps. The question is, someone asked if the screen is shared. Yes, the screen is shared. If you're not able to see it, you can check out the video afterwards. Right now, or right after this presentation, or by tomorrow, you should be able to get an email. You should get an email from me with the recording. Okay. So is the paid version limited to 100 projects? The paid version, so we actually have multiple tiers and everything from the business and enterprise, et cetera. So if you look at our pricing page, it says how many projects you can have, but then you can also have archive projects and so forth. But at our highest level, there is no limit. Fantastic, thanks. All right. If there's any other questions, feel free to send in the chat. And if there aren't, feel free to send, if you don't want to send the chat, feel free to send me an email, hi@affluence.com. As I mentioned, the webinars are recorded, and so they'll be posted on our website. And so I'm going to send that information right here. But there's also a lot of other integrations into Chrome and Edge and so forth. So you can just search for those at those various app stores. Thank you all for your time today, and thank you for the questions. I appreciate it. Thank you.